Hi there, Let's Talk Sports fans. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let's Talk New York Sports, and I'm joined by my co-host, a man I look forward to talking with every Friday, Keith Engle from TGI Sports Talk. Thanks for joining me today.
Great to be here as always, Dan. I hope you're doing well. In the UK, it's like 91 degrees here in upstate New York today, April 13th, which is not normal. And my office is about 100 degrees. So I hope you can't hear the fans blowing all around me, because I can.
Uh, no, I can't. I did hear the weather was heating up. Both Johnny and Scott said it's been um, shall we say, out of control. I guess this is nature's way of telling you baseball season's in full swing.
Right. Well, this is normal for us now. We don't get spring and fall. We just get winter and summer. That's all we get here. So we went right from winter. It was 30 degrees a couple days last week, and now it's been 90 the last 2 days. So, and we're going back
I
into
know
the
how you.
week. So.
I know how you feel. We didn't really get winter over here. We basically have a summer and a little less warm seasons. But yeah, it seems the world is changing along with New York sports, Keith.
That's true. New York sports keeps changing, and we're here every week since you've been back. Actually, getting back in the groove, as you mentioned earlier, a little different for doing it with you, and which I enjoy a lot, as opposed to doing it myself. Because if I don't have somebody to play off of like you, I rely on the comments, which we actually had quite a few of last week, so that was good. We had some good byplay with the audience too.
We have. And before we get started, how was your show this morning? I had a chance to catch it. Was Carlos as um, energetic as normal?
We were kind of on the same page with a lot of stuff today. We just talked about the beginning of baseball season, a little bit about the Rays start, and Yankees. We talked some NFL draft stuff, some NBA stuff. And I think we were okay. He only went off the rails, or I went off the rails, depending on your perspective. I think one time when we were talking about Major League Baseball and how exciting it is with the steals up and everything, and it kind of set me off because the whole thing with steals being up is it's an artificial thing because you can only throw over first base twice, or you got a free stolen base. I could steal second base if you told me you weren't throwing over. I'd just take a 25-foot lead. So anyway, then we went off the rails a little, but otherwise we had a pretty good calm show this morning.
And I caught your one-on-one show last night. Seemed like a very good chat.
Yeah, it was a great. We went a long time. I think we went nearly an hour and 20 minutes, and there was just so much that Irving had to share. He's been through a lot, and his ups and downs, both professionally and personally in his life. And as I commented at the end, his attitude towards what's happened to him in his life is where he was here a few years ago is very uplifting, and I enjoyed the conversation a lot. Plus, I watched him play his whole Patriot career. His career spanned our time of having season tickets at Foxborough. So,
yeah, I love that. I mean, I can't wait to see where content grow. Lots of big guests coming, so everyone be sure to check it out. I did share it last night, but I'll share it again once we're done. So yeah, and we do have Ian. Ian is someone obviously from Australia, has his own
yeah.
NFL podcast, and I sort of he's been commenting on the shows, and we've talked about collabing at some point. So
Yeah, well,
everyone.
I think Ian jumped in the college sports huddle the other night. We were talking a little bit about because I was schooled that there was a difference between rugby and Australian rules football. I think that was Ian that jumped in. So, welcome, Ian.
Thanks, and as we always say, we like having different viewpoints and different voices. So, as Johnny said, let's talk sports would seem to be worldwide. So, I love getting a different perspective.
Oh, we're definitely worldwide. I mean, gosh, I look at my demographics from TGI Sports Talk, and I'm sure your reach is even greater. I mean, I've got great fandom in your home country, the UK, now Australia, and a lot of European countries. It's really cool to watch that. So it's fun.
Yep, it definitely is. So before we get started, everyone, please head over to TGI Sports Talk. Drop them a follow both on Facebook and
I do.
YouTube. I know Keith would appreciate it.
Keep talking, Dan.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Oh no.
any sports fan, yeah, um,
Well, hopefully you
want
guys are
to
hearing
check out
Dan or
Keith's,
me, because one of us, I think me,
um,
did something so I can't hear
yeah,
anything.
you're coming through perfect. So,
Ah, jeez. All I wanted was a banner.
how's that, Keith?
I'm gonna pop out and I'll be back, Dan, if you can hear me.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. Keith's just got a few technical issues and he'll be right back. So, as I was saying, anyone would like
How about
Keith's
now?
content. Yeah, are you better,
Okay.
Keith?
Didn't we have technical difficulties last week?
Uh, that's,
Ian can hear us both. I can't hear. Oh, I know what I did. I did this one time before. Oh my gosh, so stupid. Hi, Dan.
uh,
You know what I did
no
is I
problem.
dropped this stupid stress ball on my keyboard and it muted my whole computer. And I keep thinking it's the soundboard or it's something else, and it's simply my computer. I did this one time with Jim Beringer for like 20 minutes. So thank you, Ian, for saying you can hear me because it prompted me.
Fancy and just goes to show this is definitely live
Live.
TV. So yeah, so as I was saying, everyone go check out Keith's content. Um, his stuff all does drop on Let's Talk Sports, but we all say let's grow together. So check out Keith's great stuff, and yeah, I know you would appreciate your support.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your support as well, Dan. And certainly check out all of the great shows Dan's brought on to Let's Talk Sports. He's done a great job of growing that community. So great job.
Thanks for that,
Now that
Keith.
our mutual admiration society is finished.
Yeah, let's jump in. If we may as well start with your Patriots. Probably one of the bigger news this week, and I say big with a hyphen in. It is obviously thick in off season and not uh at draft. They have brought in a quarterback, but probably not a name what was on many people's I must
Yeah.
have list. How do you feel about your new quarterback added to your room?
Well, Trace McSorley's been around a while. He started some games in the NFL. I think he started some games for the Cardinals last year, even if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
Cardinals, and I think it was drafted by the Ravens. I could be wrong with that.
Yeah,
I think
I
they
think that's
drafted
right.
him as the gadget guy. Yeah,
Yeah, and then it might have been from. I think he's from Penn State. I can't remember, but I think he's from Penn State. But in any event, we need a guy to carry the clipboard, and I'm sure he can carry it as good as anybody in the league. So I'm happy. It's fine. It's not a. It is the biggest move of the week, but it certainly won't be the biggest move of their offseason, and determine what happens next year. Bob, with the Hoyer gone, to Josh McDaniels' quarterback room in Vegas, they needed somebody to carry that clipboard while Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones figure out who Bill Belichick's going to pick for a quarterback. So he's as good as anybody.
agree, and I don't mean this harshly. I would rather have Hoyer. That's just my personal
I probably would
opinion. Not
too.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it's just one. Look, he's not um Patrick Mahomes, but not just because he's been in the system. I just trust him more.
He's like another coach on the staff, right? And it'll be a little different this year, Dan, with Bill O'Brien there, and and a real quarterback coach and somebody that Mac Jones can kind of work with and not have to go outside the organization, as we know isn't a good idea. But I don't think he'll feel that need when he's got people to go to on the staff, which he didn't have last year. And Hoyer probably would have been that guy. But so it's not quite as important. But I agree. I think I would rather, if I had my druthers, have Hoyer than McSorley for sure. Because if either
And
one of them have to
also,
play, it doesn't matter. We're not going to win.
yes, though don't rule out Trace coming on in maybe some one or two design plays this season where he
Yeah.
runs the ball. That is what the Ravens drafted him for, not necessarily to play any quarterback, just play some designed runs. So don't rule that out.
Excellent. And let me just put Rick's comment up here so we can say hello to him anyway. And Rick will be talking a little bit more about where we are in the process there. And I thank you for the compliments as well. Dan does a great job getting the guys, and I'm glad you enjoy the interviews that we do. I have fun doing them. If you can't tell when I'm doing them, I really enjoy what I'm doing when I do that. So
Yeah. So I'm going to talk with Keith afterwards, but one more booked in from his new list and one from the old list, what I've
sweet.
been, shall we say, encouraging all week, and looks like we might have hooked them. So looking forward to talking with Keith about that. And not just that, like some of his people we booked in clearly had a good time because some of them are keen to stay involved from odd interviews on the networks. I think that speaks volumes for the job Keith did with his interview.
Well, thank you for that.
Um, and something for you is I know you're a big Vikings fan, Rick. Mr. Foreman is donating a signed print of himself for the charity event for the church I mentioned last week for
Cool.
what young Lucas runs out. So I'm not sure if I'll do it as a raffle for whoever donates or basically an auction type thing, but that was very good of him to donate. He might be jumping on as well, so I'm excited to have him involved. And as I said to Keith when I was lining him up, just seems like not just a very nice man, but a very cool man as well. So I thank him for all the support.
That's awesome. I'll send him a little note saying thank you.
Yeah. So Bill Belichick, I wanted to get your opinion. We talked about last year about some comments Robert Kraft has made. Do you feel like if they didn't make playoffs, then this could be a tricky situation? It's crazy to say this given the success he's had, but I think Robert Kraft is getting a bit frustrated with the Rebecca. I think everybody knows Bill wants this record, but if you do the maths for the amount of wins they're getting currently, it could take 3 or 4 years to get to that number. So do you think there might be a stickling point in this? They have a big elevation in their results, and how do you think there might start to at least be some chatter next off season?
Yeah, you kind of faded in and out there in the middle, but
Yeah,
I got the gist of what you were talking about, so we're fine. You know, I do not think Bill Belichick will ever get fired unless the bottom totally fell out or some crazy controversy happened. Similar to those in the past, but I just don't think. I think he will though be pressured if they don't do well this year. I think he'll be pressured to give up something, either control of player personnel and front office stuff, or potentially walking away from the coaching and just doing the front office stuff. I would think that if this is not a good year, there will be pressure in one way or the other for him to take on one role or the other. And I don't think Robert Kraft will ever fire Bill Belichick. I really do not think that will happen. I think he'll walk away. Now, it could be a mutual decision, right? I'm not saying he wouldn't have impact, or input on Bill's future, but I think they would come to a decision mutually, and it will never look like he got fired. He could decide to spend more time with his family if he walked away, but will there be more heat? Sure, because we're now. I mean, I don't know, 4 years it'll be removed from a Super Bowl. 4 years removed from a playoff win, and that's not going to last. They're not going to sit very well with the fandom who still cherish Bill Belichick, still worship him for the most part, or Robert Kraft, who clearly is giving off signals that he's getting antsy. And, I think something's got to happen, or again, he'll be forced to give up some power before he would get fired for sure.
I agree. Say they made a lateral move. Do you think, and he hasn't got that record, what do you think Bill would favour keeping his legacy intact of not going to another team, or what do you think would happen? Because I kind of think that record means as much to him. If you gave him a choice of having maybe a couple less Super Bowls and that record, I think he would pick that record. It seems to me that he
Yeah.
views that as his crowning moment, if you will.
Yeah, I'm sure that Bill would say that's not important to him because that's just how he is, right? But inside,
Yeah.
in private circles, I'm sure he talks about how important that record is, and I'm sure he wants it. Would he go somewhere else to get it? It's hard to say. I can't see it happening, but the way sports are today, I can't say no. It depends how close he is. If he's 3 years away, which again, that would have to be. I don't know, how far is he away right now. I forget the number.
I'm pretty sure it amounts to it's in or around the low 20s or something
All
like
right.
that. So essentially, it's probably about 3 more years, unless they make have a historic season and a deep run. I
Yeah,
pretty much think it'd be about 3 years.
that's the other thing that's going to factor into this, Dan. If he's there, if they have a really bad year this year, and he's still got 2 years away from getting this record, then he could very well decide to move on his own. Who knows?
Yeah,
But if he's goes through these 2 years and then he's, I don't know, 3 wins away from the record, I find it hard to believe that Bob Kraft would not want him to break that record in New England. So he wouldn't get fired. So the closer he gets to the record, the safer he's going to be from a coaching standpoint, I think.
yeah,
If that makes sense.
I do. Yeah, it does, and I do agree with that. 'Cause it's going to be interesting what he does favour. I mean, Robert Kraft has always said it doesn't matter what you've done, it's what you can do for us. But it's Bill Belichick, so we will test that theory over the next couple of years, I kind of think. And I'm kind of intrigued by if loyalty to Bill for what he has done plays a bigger part than maybe that ethos. It'll be interesting. I'm intrigued to see how it plays out, and I'll be honest, I don't know what way Robert Kraft would go.
It is going to be interesting. Again, I firmly believe he would never get fired, but like I say, things aren't the same as they were there. The whole Brady divorce from the Patriots uh, really changed the relationship of Belichick and Brady, and Belichick and Robert Kraft, quite frankly. So it's not as strong as it was. But and it's interesting you talk about Kraft saying it's not I don't care what you've done for me in the past. What are you going to do for me today and going forward? That's Bill Belichick's mantra as well. So he's got to look himself in the mirror and say, "Am I still the best man for this job?" Right now, I say yes. If we have a bad year next year, then I may say something different.
Yeah. I agree, and I think it's interesting. We've spoken a lot about Bill O'Brien coming in. Will
I
that start to be a problem in an in-house solution? I'm not saying that is the case, but he has got history with the organisation
He
as
does.
well.
he's got a spotty record as a head coach. I mean,
Yeah.
he took the Texans to some playoffs, early in his tenure there, and never won playoff games. Well, I guess he did beat the Patriots one year actually, but I don't know if Bill O'Brien would be the natural successor here. I don't know who would be right now. It's very hard to say. I mean, the guys who you would have thought about, Josh McDaniel. Are they going to really hire Josh McDaniel if he flames out for a second time somewhere else? I don't know. I don't know that he's going to be that attractive to him. Gerard Mayo is a guy that keep an eye on. If there's something that's going to happen in-house, Gerard Mayo is a guy that I would keep an eye on.
I agree. One thing, and this is just spitballing, what I wouldn't rule out because I think it might be attractive for both sides is Sean McVay. If the Rams keep going down, I think that might be the new challenge. Would he like to be the man that follows Bill Belichick? I kind of think he's got the ego
Yeah.
to do it. Some coaches wouldn't, but I kind of think he would welcome it. And if Robert Kraft wanted to move in a different direction, can you get two coaches more different? So,
No, you can't, by the way. And it would be an interesting, it's a tough job to follow a guy like Belichick, right? It's better to be the guy after the guy who was after him, right?
yeah,
But that's been the way with a lot of teams. I mean, look at the Giants and Ray Hanley right after Bill Parcells. Tom Coughlin did pretty good after that. So he would have looked good no matter what. But that's going to be a tough shoes to fill. McVay's an interesting name to bring up because he's a young guy and relishes a challenge, obviously, and does have the ego to say, I can fill those shoes.
um, so moving sideways to the New York Giants, a couple bits of news. One, Saquon Barkley have said he'll now he's been tagged. If there wasn't a long-term deal, he'll sit out off-season programs, and some fans are up in arms. But I actually think it's a positive. We've spoke about his health. You don't want him at camp, in my opinion. But when you tag him anyway, you've got to know that he's taken no part of any of that. To be honest, and I'm more intrigued by the second report that they've got no intention of signing him to a long-term deal and are essentially using the tag as a way to get through the season as they rebuild that roster. And I'm not even saying they're wrong about that. If he's looking for what's rumored to between 10 and 12 million a season, as dynamic as he is, depending what the guarantees is, and there's not out for say 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying they're wrong. I just wanted to get your opinion on both these things.
Well, the shelf life for running backs, most running backs, is very short, and Barkley's already approaching it. His comeback last year was amazing, and we talked about it before that happened. If you remember on this very show, saying sometimes it takes a year to come back from that type of injury. Now, he did have quite a heavy workload last year, and his production at the end of the year wasn't nearly what it was early in the year. I'm sure that concerns the Giants a little bit. I hope that they are not negotiating in bad faith with him, right? They are trying to work out a deal according to the Giants and according to Barkley. But if they're just doing it as a ruse to keep him happy, then I think that's unfair to the player. You might better say, we're franchising you. We're not interested in extending you. Let him go out there and give his best so he can go out and earn a contract and move forward. Don't do it in bad faith. And I'm not saying they should get rid of him because it's within their rights to kind of do what they're doing. But at the same time, it puts his long-term future at risk because he'll be playing on a one-year deal until he signs something else. And they knew, as you said before, once they franchised him, they knew this is what was going to happen. He's not going to report until he needs to. He's got no choice, right? I mean, it'll be enforced. He's going to play at that contract and have to come to camp or not play at all. And we've seen it happen. Le'Veon Bell sat out, so it's not unheard of for running backs or players to do it. didn't work out well for him. So I mean, maybe I hope he was paying attention to that. It's a bad situation right now for both these teams.
I
If I were the Giants, I would find a way within my cap to extend him at least 3 years or whatever. I'm not giving him 5 6 years.
I agree. I mean, first of all, how they handle this is going to be very telling because, in my opinion, they completely mishandled the Daniel Jones thing, not taking up the 5th year option. I don't mind the deal what they gave, but they could have put that off a year. So that as good as they've been on the field, but how much of that is the coaching staff and
Mm-hmm.
how much the front office? And if they mishandle this, say they're operating in bad faith, as you said, it kind of those two things together makes me judge them a little bit. What I would have done, given what the franchise tag is, see if you can work out a 3-year deal where the average per year this year would be lower, say something like 25 or to 27 million over 3 years. There's got to be some sort of middle road there where they can look after him who, when on the field, he has been at least pretty good, at times phenomenal, and also look after their long-term future.
Yeah, they're in a tough situation. I mean, with the Jones thing, I don't know that the contract was. I think that the contract is fairly team friendly and cap friendly, and
Yeah,
gave them the opportunity to keep both these guys. Whether they can keep Barkley happy within that framework is another question, and it's always hard. When you gotta. I mean, the NFL isn't like Major League Baseball where the cap is kind of imaginary. You can just go over it and pay, luxury tax. It's a hard cap, and you got to make hard decisions sometimes. And the more you start playing, Carlos talks about it all the time that teams aren't deep. This is why, because these contracts for the top players keep going up. The cap does go up, but not in the same proportion as the contracts are going up. And teams are going to be strapped, and you're going to have guys, backing up guys that are not worthy of being in the NFL. And it's going to be hard to keep top players at multiple positions the way the Giants are trying to do now.
I agree. If you're good drafter, that almost works against you because if you hit on 4 or 5 guys in a draft, well, you've got to pay them also.
Eventually, right?
Um, it works against you. The Bills, you're starting to see that a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, and there's a few other teams with this problem as well.
The Jets will
So,
run into it, 4 years down the road. The Jets will run into the same thing.
yeah, they've already started because they can't get a deal done for Trinham Ravens, which he's
Yeah.
made it clear that he's not attending any off-season stuff without a deal on the table. And I don't know. I have a hunch, this isn't the road where I'll go down. I have a hunch they might look to franchise tag him and not pay him right away. I
Maybe.
think that sends the wrong message to you've got a bevy of young players coming up to be paid. So I would pay him this year for two reasons. One, it sends a message, and another is, well, then you've got to say you pay someone else next year, you've got to pay them both at the same time. So you're sort of adding to your problems each year rather than spacing it out.
Yeah, you brought up a good point in there too. That I talked about during the Aaron Judge issues last year. That part about when other players see that, like the superstars, the team, the guys that carry the team and are the most important parts of the team aren't taken care of, it sends the wrong message to these guys about their long term future there. And that's why a lot of times you've got to bite the bullet and pay these guys so that you can show guys you're serious about keeping good talent, including them later on down the road.
I agree, and that I thought it got lost a little bit at the end of the season with the Wilson drama. But for Brennan to come out and say to the cameras, I'm not doing anything without a deal on the table from a guy what normally says pretty much nothing
Mm-hmm.
in the media, that's pretty telling. It's sort of given them a subtle hint. I'm done with waiting, pay me, or things might change a little bit. So I personally, look, since he said that, at least four young tackles have been paid top dollar, so that you're adding to the price as well. And in my opinion, he's the best one of the lot. So it's like quarterbacks. The longer you wait, the more you're sort of causing yourself problems. It's what happened to the Cowboys with Dak.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said there. I mean, again, it's the cap creates a lot of issues for teams, and it's very hard to keep everybody happy. And one unhappy guy can really, snowball into a bad locker room.
Yep, I agree. So we've got we've talked several shows about uh, Odell Beckham Jr. Will he end up a New York Jet? Well, no, he's ended up a Raven, and to be honest with you, I don't blame the Jets for doing that deal. There was a lot of Jets fans what didn't want to pay him 12 million, so to do 15 but raises to 18, I think it would have been irresponsible, particularly if you could guarantee he would play every game and he'd probably get back to his old form, then I guess you could have sold me on it if it was incentive based. But that being said, you can't guarantee any of that. And for number two, that's just which is what he would have been with Garrett Wilson in the offense. I don't blame the Jets for doing that. From what I understand, according to the beat, they wanted him at 7 or 8 million, which could raise to 12 with bonuses, and that's quite a bit far apart from what he got.
I think the Jet. Listen, I'm surprised it was the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens weren't terribly high profile in this chase last year. I don't think. I think the Jets were smart to stay away from him. If you could have got him on the cheap, where if he was a problem, you could just cut him and it wouldn't be an issue. That's fine. But not to go up into kind of stupid money. I thought it was going to be a high risk with already having the potential drama of what's going to go on with Rodgers around. To add Odell Beckham to that mix would probably not have been a real smart thing for a team that will have a chance to contend this year if they play their cards right. And Rodgers does eventually, eventually make his way to the Meadowlands.
Yep, I agree. I personally think it's all down to it is an overpay, but I think they know they had to make a move like this just to make sure Lamar turns up week one. I think that's put the chances of that's probably gone up. So they think to themselves it's a 1 year deal. Let's just do this to make sure he's through the door when it matters and sort of be damned. Sort of we've got to do something because this is snowballing fast.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll see. I mean, Baltimore's in a tough spot. I mean, they don't be surprised come draft day that they might be active in that market and look to move up for a quarterback. It'll be interesting to see what they do, and then move Lamar.
What I would do, whether they move him or not, is I would look at Richardson if he falls like some people think he might fall a little bit, then I would be active, even if it means using next year's first round pick. And then you've got options. Do you move Lamar or do you let him sit behind Lamar this season and then essentially just shake hands at the end of the season? I think if unless they want to completely change the offense, I think he's the best quarterback for them in this draft.
It's I'm having a hard time getting on the Richardson bandwagon. I mean, I know what people love his athleticism, and the Ravens have seen that type of thing up close because Lamar Jackson fell in the draft because people weren't confident that he'd be a good NFL quarterback. He was a great athlete, obviously. But listen, Richardson hasn't even approached to what Lamar Jackson did in college. So I'm not sure what people are seeing to have him. They've got teams moving up as high as 3 to get him. I don't get it. Now, but on the flip side, I've seen if he does fall, I've seen some mock drafts with the Patriots picking him at 14, which I cannot see. But I don't know. Somebody's going to take a chance on him, and I could be totally wrong. I just don't get risking that much of your future with a high draft pick or trading up to get in this position to draft him that high. You're really putting your career path in jeopardy if you are wrong on this kid.
Yeah, I think 15's the sweet spot for him. He is someone. Look, if he was wasn't a quarterback or quarterbacks weren't as important in the league, he would be a first round pick, but probably right at the bottom. But if you ain't got quarterback, you ain't got anything. So I
Oh, I
think
know.
15's the right spot for him.
He's attracted to a lot of guys. Mel Kiper's latest mock draft I think 2 days ago, Dan has he's got the Titans trading up to 3 to take him, and 4 quarterbacks going in the first 4 picks.
Um,
It'd be
well,
shocking if it happens, but we'll see.
my argument is they said this about the quarterbacks last year, and some of them didn't go until the third round. So, I'm
Great
not
point.
sold
That's
on
a great
that.
point. Malik Willis is a great point, right? People had him as in the top 5 in some mock drafts, and where did he get drafted?
Um, I'm pretty sure it was the third. It was the third or fourth. I remember thinking, how much is he
Early
going
third.
for? Which, to me, I paid no attention to the combine. I make up my mind at the end of the college season, and I don't change it for whatever because whereas it's not, I view the combine as an opportunity to talk with them about their mentality. Who cares if they can jump through some cones and so forth?
I don't know. It must be Rick because of the way we're talking about. Don't be surprised if I used to do this bit with Mark Mancini when he was on my show a lot, where every week we'd pick a don't be surprised. Here's your lock, and here's your don't be surprised if, and that's kind of what we're talking about here in the NFL draft. I think this is going to be a crazy draft. What are we 2 weeks away from it? Yesterday,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I still don't. Other than Stroud and Bryce, uh, Jesus, what the hell's his name? Bryce Young.
Bryce Young.
I want to say Bryce Murray for some reason. Bryce Young. I don't think we know where any of these guys are going to go. I mean, similar to last year. Will Levis could go 4. He could go in the second round. I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say I've got my own thoughts on Levis. Don't get me wrong, a good quarterback, but he streams as someone what it's a long off season. People watch tapes and then try to convince themselves, yeah, he could be a top 10 pick. But in actuality, he's borderline if that he's a mid-round first pick. In my opinion, I've got nothing against the guy, don't get me wrong, but at the
Well,
end of the day, I think he's just a developmental guy who could be good in the right situation.
I'm on a shrinking bandwagon when it comes to Will Levis. I realize that. I've been in love with this kid, not literally, but in love with this kid since he was a sophomore, and I just feel like he just feels he has to. It just feels like an NFL quarterback to me. I can't explain it, and you're not the only one who's kind of gotten soured on him over the last 5 6 months. So we'll see what happens.
He's just one of these. I just don't think he's like a top guy. That doesn't mean he can't be a very good guy. We all know where Tom Brady was picked at. Just because he gets picked, say, 15 to 20, that's still a good spot to be
No,
in. In some cases, could be better because it'll be a better team drafting you in all likelihood.
well, Rick would like to see him come to Minnesota as the heir apparent to Kirk Cousins, apparently. So
You,
that's a there's. I'll take that as a thumbs up, Rick.
you could get me on board with that. The only thing that I will say, I think the Vikings have kind of got worse this offseason. So can they afford to put a first round pick on someone? what's like may not play this year, assuming Cousins is healthy. I like the fit. I think it actually might be a perfect fit.
I think it's a good idea. And I think it's a good idea for the Vikings to pick a quarterback anyway because Kirk Cousins has shown he's a good NFL quarterback, but he's got a ceiling and he's hit it. He's not going to take a team any further than he has. He's not going to win a championship ever, most likely, and unless his situation changes drastically. And it's probably time that the Vikings look for some new blood there.
I agree because that division has completely shook up this last year. So yeah, you might want to make a change. So Keith, moving to baseball, what's your thoughts on the New York Yankees? I kind of feel the same as we did last week. Nothing too special there. Um, doing exactly as I expected, but the only outlier is if Tampa Bay continued this, then they're
Well,
kind of going to have to up their game if unless they want it to be a more interesting end to a season than they would want.
it's something to think about. Listen, if we'd said before the season that after 2 weeks of the season, the Yankees would be 5 games out of first place, you'd think, oh my God, we must have got off to a horrendous start. Well, they didn't. They're 8-5, which is not terrible. I mean, that's I don't know 90 plus wins, right? If they just played at that pace, so that's fine. But the Rays have gotten off 13-0, obviously a record tying start. Something to keep in mind though. The Rays are only beating the teams they should be beating. They played the Nationals, they played the A's, they played the Tigers, and they played the Red Sox. Now, winning all 13 of those games is still very impressive. Don't write me letters from Tampa Bay. I understand they're playing great baseball, but if these games were won over these 13 games were won over the course of 5 series out of 7, you wouldn't have thought so much about it in the middle of the season. So the Yankees don't need to panic that they're 5 games out and the Rays are already got 13 wins. There's a lot of games. We'll start to see more about Tampa Bay this weekend when they play Toronto. I still think this division is for the Yankees in Toronto to win or lose. The Rays are better than we thought, yes. They've got some really good young pitchers, which we knew. They've got some guys at bat that have had comeback seasons, and Kelnick and Lowe, for example. So I wouldn't panic if I'm a Yankee fan. I think the Yankees are where they need to be, especially when you remember they haven't had Severino to pitch yet. They haven't had Rondon to pitch yet. I think they're fine. So don't get too worked up about being 5 games behind. And last night is an aberration. You gave up 9 runs in the first inning, punt and move on.
Um, I agree, and I will say this: they tend to start the season better than they end it. We all remember a couple of years ago when they made the playoffs, and depth will be an issue. They do a fantastic job at using the resources they have, but
Best in baseball.
um, yeah, I believe so. I think they have a roadmap for owners. What we all know who we're talking about. What owners what don't want to spend money, even though they have it. People like um the Pirates is a prime example. If they run themselves how Tampa does, they would be doing a lot better. So, um, it's just because they're such a young roster, will they have the consistency and the depth? So let's see how it goes. A
Yeah,
lot of Yankees
I
fans,
need to see him play a couple real teams too, right? I mean,
yeah,
again, I don't mean to disparage them. I really don't. 13-0 is very impressive, but let's not forget they're playing three or four of the worst teams in baseball.
yeah, I would agree with that. Before we talk Mets, a lot of Yankees fans are a little bit, shall we say, emotional about the lack of hitting or not as much as they would like, not as much homers outside of Judge. Do you think this is a concern? I think personally it's a concerted effort. They were a little unhappy with how the hitting's been relating into
Mhm.
the postseason. So I think a lot of it's been slowly trying to get less power hitting. So is it something you're concerned about, or not really?
Not after 13 games. I mean, I think again, this isn't the lineup that we're going to see every day. Most likely in a couple of months when Bader gets healthy and whoever emerges to play left field. I mean, Frenchie Cordero has been a great story this year so far in the spring. Whether he'll continue that, certainly remains to be seen. But he's certainly a viable option to replace Hicks's at bats out there. So I don't think this is a finished product. This lineup, and I'm not getting too worked up over. I think their offense has been, okay so far. Only hitting like 240, and the on base percentage probably worries me more than anything. I get on the Rangers. Alan Perales knows this. I get on the Rangers. The fact that they can't win will be because they don't get on base. Well, the Yankees aren't getting on base right now. Their on base percentage is just over 300. So that
Yeah,
worries me a little bit, but these guys are going to hit. Pitchers are normally ahead of hitters right now anyway. So, if we're here a month from now, then I'll start to get concerned.
yeah, but I would agree with that. And lastly, the Mets, how do you feel how they're doing? Obviously, a good start to the season, but as we talked about, just as I expected, if you asked me, and I felt this at the beginning of the season, who do I have more faith in at this point? It's the Braves. For me, they're favourites. How do you feel this is going to play out for the Mets? Is there any areas of concern or?
There are a lot of areas of concern. I don't know if they have enough hitting. I don't know if they have enough power outside of Alonso, who's carrying the team really offensively right now. Nobody's really setting it on fire. There's concerns with the pitching staff and obviously the age of your two aces and Carrasco's uh, early season woes so far. And then the bullpen. Is the bullpen going to hold up without Diaz? So this team, well, I think it's still a really good team. It's not as good as last year, despite the addition of the Lander in my mind. Um, with that said, I still think they'll win. They'll still be the wild card out of the East with, and the Braves are going to. I think the Braves are the most complete team in the National League. When you look at offense, pitching, defense, I think they're better than the Padres. I really do. And team chemistry, you got to add that in there, right? As complete team. Um, so I put the Braves. I think they'll win by 10 games maybe over the Mets this year. 8, 10 games. But the Mets will make the playoffs. But just they won't be as good as they won last year. They're not going to win 100 games this year. But again, it doesn't mean they're a bad team. And they could get in the playoffs and get on a run, unlike last year's team who did not. So, it all depends on how you're playing once you get there, as you kind of alluded to earlier. So you make the playoffs and then hope your momentum carries you from there.
I would agree with all of that. So as we look to wrap up, Keith, your Sunday stream of consciousness, anything special planned?
Well, we'll certainly be diving more into baseball, and we'll be looking at this Rays Blue Jays series pretty close. We'll actually talk some NBA, which we haven't talked a lot about on the Sunday show, but with the Knicks in Cleveland tipping off tomorrow, I believe, we'll certainly want to talk a little about that. And then we'll be diving into some draft stuff and wherever our conversation goes, because Sundays is literally a stream of consciousness. There's never telling, I've got an outline of where I want to go, and I often don't go anywhere near it because my audience will take me somewhere else, which is certainly what that show is all about. So we look forward to that because I never know what we'll talk about.
Which is part of the fun.
Yeah,
Everyone be sure to check it out. A good time always had by all.
for sure. We just can't talk about women in sports anymore because I get in trouble every time I bring the topic up or it gets brought up.
Yeah, we don't want Keith to get cancelled.
I got people picking in my house for crying out loud.
So that's just about it. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, everyone who commented, and most of all, Keith, thanks to you for joining me today.
Well, Dan, I am so happy that here we are on a streak of about a month in a row, and it's been a lot of fun having you back, and I look forward to next week.
Yeah, same here. Thank you to everyone, and yeah, until next time, let's talk sport, fans. Thanks for watching.
Have a great weekend, everybody.